Namaskar, hello, and welcome to Army TV. We are here with you for discussing the United States elections, the second largest democracy of the world. The leaders of the world, the decision makers, people, political analysts are keeping a hawk's eye on the outcome of elections in the United States because the Republicans or the Democratic Party, whichever party comes to power, will have a different perspective for the global policies. To discuss all this, we have with us Mr. S. Venkat Narayan. He's a senior editor, a very senior journalist, and an expert on strategic affairs. So hello Venkat.
Hello.
You're most welcome to our Almi TV and a very special program on political outcome of the elections in the United States.
Thank you for having me.
So now that the postal ballots have already taken place and almost 1 million of people have already voted, and the trends in the United States are Donald Trump and Biden. So what is your assessment like? What's happening in the United States?
Well, this is a very crucial election in the history of the United States. This is the 59th presidential election. They have been having presidential elections for the last 232 years. This is crucial because we had, during the last 4 years, since 2016, we did not have a traditional politician as President of the United States. We had a businessman, and his outlook about the rest of the world was very different from a typical politician. And so a lot of things that were taken for granted by the rest of the world about the United States being the only hyperpower, as they call it. Yes. And that is no longer the case because Mr. Trump has been busy talking about America first, and he wants to pull out the American troops from Afghanistan by Christmas, and he has pulled out America from the Paris Climate Accord. And so during the past 4 years, the United States, some analysts say, has actually now become divided states of America.
Okay, because as you know that the formation of United States itself was a dissident movement, and the people who were not satisfied with the political structure of their countries left United States. So formation of United States itself was a very revolutionary kind of step, and the Boston Tea Party and the Declaration of Independence of America, the Lafayette, and the various other, George Washington. So the revolution in United States and in the minds of people of United States, and a quest for change and a quest for democracy, do you think it persists till date?
Yes, I think it still does. I get the impression, I've been reading the Washington Post or the New York Times and following it on the BBC, and they've been having opinion polls practically every day.
Right.
And the latest CNN poll says 72% of the people are favoring Joe Biden of the Democratic Party, and less than 25% are, talking about voting for Mr. Trump. And across the United States, several other opinion polls have indicated that Biden is leading by 10 percentage points at 52, whereas Trump is struggling at 42. So it seems to me that, and this is the first time in the history of the United States that 80 million people have already exercised their franchise, and that includes a lot of educated urban women, that includes a lot of young people, that includes a lot of black people.
A lot of new voters also.
All the voters, yes. See, because of the coronavirus, the Americans has this, an opportunity to go and exercise their franchise, and you could send your vote by ballot, or you can stand in a queue and vote. And I have seen pictures in the New York Times of long queues, and some people have been waiting for 11 hours. It doesn't happen in a country like India.
So that brings us to a very crucial question, that this is probably the first time that the world has seen the COVID-19 pandemic, and United States elections are the first major step towards elections with such vast majority of people participating. So what's going to be the impact of post-COVID-19 scenario on elections in United States?
Well, I think it is going to have a very serious impact on American elections, because Mr. Trump has been saying from the beginning that, oh, don't worry, it will go away, and he has been going out in the open without wearing the mask and without maintaining social distance. As a result, he himself ended up COVID positive, and as of now, 250,000 Americans have died because of COVID, and 9 million Americans are suffering from COVID, which is a very serious issue. And still Mr. Trump is defying science, and is saying, no, science is rubbish, don't believe in that, we cannot keep America shut down because the economy will be in a bad shape and people are going out openly and all that kind of stuff. As a result, I think if you take countrywide, look at the things, America has been one of the worst affected countries in the world,
Yeah, Venkat, I did some research myself, and as I was discussing with you before we started the interview, that I'm a bit of an expert on American history because I was a student of American history.
Okay.
So I want to discuss with you about the perception of today's America post-COVID-19 and Donald Trump and the national security of United States of America, on which he is making major statements after falling out with China and Korea.
Right. You see, China has been painted as the bad boy.
Yes.
They say he's calling it Chinese virus, because it originated from Wuhan. Because the Chinese are, disputing that claim and all that. And he says the North Korean president is a buddy of mine, and the Russian president Putin is a buddy of mine.
Yes.
And Mr. Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, is a bad boy, according to him and all that.
They were buddies before the
They were buddies
COVID-19.
before, yeah. So, I think all these things, I'm afraid, are having a negative impact on the psyche of the American voter. So, you have an unprecedented interest in the voting elections on the 3rd of November. And this is the first time in the history of America that 80 million people have already exercised their franchise,
Yes, yes.
And you have a large number of blacks, you have a large number of Hispanics, a large number of young people, a large number of Asian, Indians in particular, the diaspora, taking part in this election. And you see, in America, during the past 100 years, no presidential election attracted more than 60% of the vote. In 2016, only 57.2% of the people voted.
Right.
Okay, so that means this election, if we expect 150 million people may vote, half of them have already voted, and this is information as per 2 days ago. And you have elections on the 3rd. We have still 4 more days. So I want to be surprised if another 5 or 10 million people, go and exercise their franchise.
Right.
And the Supreme Court also has given permission to several states, saying that yes, if the ballots were posted before the 3rd of November and if they reach the polling booth or whatever, after that you should count them as votes. Mr. Trump did not want that, but the Supreme Court has overruled him and said that. That's a very interesting kind of development.
Yes.
So, in America, people now have become more aware of, thanks to social media, they want to go and vote and be counted. A thing like that happens in any country only when people are fed up with the incumbent presidency.
Right.
It seems to me that Mr. Trump lost it.
Right, but Venkat, I want to ask you that during the exit poll or the opinions when in the last general elections of United States, there was a very strong media wave against Donald Trump, and it was like now predicted that Donald Trump would be losing the elections and Hillary Clinton would be winning hands down. But it surprised everybody. So do you think that something like that may happen even now?
Well, I'll be very surprised if that were to happen again, because a lot of people did not personally like Hillary Clinton.
Right.
And a lot of white people who did not vote for Hillary voted for Trump. Now, a lot of elderly whites who voted for Trump last time, they have said we are going to vote for Biden. And a lot of young people, a lot of Hispanics, they have also made it very, and the blacks in particular, because of this brutal killing of a black man, by
in
putting
South,
a knee.
South America.
That's right. So, I think what happened in 2016 will not repeat itself in 2020 for the simple reason that the policies of Donald Trump have alienated not just people across the globe, but his own supporters. Opinion polls now say that half of the votes which Biden is likely to poll are of those people who voted for Trump last time, and they are now going to vote for Biden.
Right.
So in a situation like that, I am very skeptical about the possibility of the Democratic Party losing in this election. I don't think it is going to happen.
So we are privileged to have with us another guest, Mr. T.N. Ashok, who is a distinguished economic editor on micro and macro level, and has been formerly with PTI and also been editor of India.com. He's been former editor of DiplomacyIndia.com. Ashok, you're very welcome to our program in Albi TV, and we are discussing on the prospects of American elections.
Yes.
And its results on global political socio-economic scenario.
Yes.
And Mr. Venkat Narayan and we have already had a session, and in which we have discussed that almost 1 million people have already voted through postal ballots. So what do you think, what are the key issues that are in the minds of the voters, the people of America, and as the American voters are very aware? So, what are the main issues that they're going to consider for casting their vote?
I think the main issues are the effect of the pandemic coronavirus. America has been the #1 country in the world which has lost the maximum number of lives in the pandemic, and thanks to Mr. Donald Trump's policy that he started shutting down things later and was always criticizing the democratically ruled states of shutting down early. But the point is, shutting down early was in an effect control the spread of the virus. But when it came to states like New York or New York City, you virtually, my son lives there and he tells me that it's like a ghost town now because nobody wants to go out in New York. Everybody is afraid of catching the pandemic. The thing is, the main issue, the three main issues that are going to affect the American elections and the vote. One is the post-pandemic situation, how the economy is going to be governed by the person who gets elected, whether it's the incumbent who gets re-elected or it's the former vice president who's going to be elected as the president, Joe Biden. The way, if you had seen the last debate at Belmont, you will see that Biden had very characteristically said that it's a vote or it's a character on ballot. So character and policies are going to dominate the issues in this election, and this is one unique election in which two of the candidates are very experienced, and then one has been a vice president for 8 years under Barack Obama, so he knows the policies very well, and then he has had his failures also, and then he knows how to correct them. He has himself openly admitted some of his policies were wrong, and he is going to correct them as the president. When President Trump started criticizing him on it, and the three main issues according to me are: one, the pandemic, how the pandemic situation is going to be controlled post, how the economy is going to be resurrected, the foreign policy issue, how they are going to handle the national security and international security, and the most important thing is immigration.
So coming to the pandemic situation, because this is the first time, as Venkat and I have already discussed, that in the pandemic situation, that such a big democracy, the second largest in the world, is going to elections and people will be casting their vote. But of course the American government has given various choices as to how they can cast their ballot. So, but I want to ask you that when this pandemic started, the COVID-19, large number of deaths took place in the United States of America, and no president and no government would want their countrymen to really die. Maybe the situation was out of control. And also the same thing happened, Ashok, in Spain, it happened in Germany, and the largest number of deaths was coming most in Italy. So to say that those deaths will have an impact on the minds of the voter in casting their vote, do you think that holds correct for United States?
Yes, we should look at the historical perspective of how the disease actually broke out. Most of the intelligence reports say that China broke out as early as September last year, but they were late in reporting to the United Nations only in December, and the United Nations itself took its time and declared that the pandemic in the epidemic in China was turning into a pandemic only by the middle of January.
Right.
Now Trump has also admitted that China did all its best to control the disease first in its territory, but allowed a huge population of expat Chinese that remit money from the United States to China were allowed to travel to the United States. The United States had no clue this population was coming in. They carried the virus and infected everybody in the US. So that was one of the biggest problems China had. The United States had no clue at all of how to control.
But it is yet not established, like there has not been a scientific evidence to the Wuhan theory, which China has vehemently denied even in the World Health Organization. And even the World Health Organization has literally not given a black check to China. So that's a disputed fact, isn't it?
No, it's not a disputed fact. There are various theories going around. One theory is that China in Wuhan has a lab, or a genetic engineering lab, where they introduced protein into the coronavirus. Coronavirus already exists. So they introduced a protein into the coronavirus, and the point of introducing the protein into the coronavirus was usually to turn it into a military weapon. That was the whole purpose of it, and it accidentally leaked out. When protein is introduced into a virus and it infects you, it starts multiplying very fast.
Right.
So this is the scientific evidence, but still nobody knows whether it came from China or the Chinese story is that a group of American soldiers and policemen had come for a training in Wuhan, and they had been inoculated against this virus. So one of them fell sick, and they actually spread the virus to the Chinese, and the Chinese carried it to the world.
So, as we have discussed earlier, that the formation of United States itself was a revolutionary movement, and the British colonies, 13 of them, declared the War of Independence to become United States of America. So now the citizens of United States of America, they are very aware people, and they want to balance and find out amongst themselves as to what are the socio-economic policies of the candidates. So Venkat, would you like to elaborate a little more on the economic aspect of what the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is offering to the people of United States of America?
You see, a large number of people have lost their jobs because companies had shut down during the coronavirus, and millions of people have been put on what you call doles, unemployment. They have that in America and Europe.
Right.
In India, we don't have that.
Yes.
So that's why we had this problem of immigrants who went back and they had no place to go and they had to walk in India and all that. And there is a lot of anxiety about people getting jobs. That's a major issue, and Biden is talking about making the minimum wage $50 an hour. $15 an hour from 8 or 10.
8 to 10.
8 to 10. 78 or whatever. So that means, literally 100%, doubling the
Yes.
doubling it. So a lot of small and medium industries are very worried about the impact of this regulation coming into effect and all that. But you see, when you are a candidate, you want to win votes, you tend to say a lot of things to impress the voters, but when you actually occupy the hot seat, you are obliged to change your stance. You see, I don't know if this $15 an hour thing will work out if and when Mr. Biden sits in the White House, but at least it will be 10 or 12 perhaps, I don't know, let us see.
And I'd like to support what Venkat Narayan has been saying about the minimum wage. Now, Biden and Trump are in agreement that a section of the workers in the United States, particularly those who work with oil refineries and chemical factories, they earn about $50 an hour. So there is a huge disparity of income. The small, as he said, the small businesses, would they be able to afford $15 an hour? But already a section of the United States, a section of the workers in the US are already earning $50. So even if the disparity is only about $35, as he said, there could be a mean level in which they could arrive at a figure of say $12 or something like that.
Right. So, discussing further on this issue, like Venkat, there are a large number of Indians in United States, which is almost a little less than 2% in casting their votes, and they really impact the total outcome of the polling also. So, what is their perception about the Indians, the Indian Americans, as you call them, diaspora? Like, what is their perception about the present elections?
Two things, we have 44 million registered Indian nationals, Indian or Americans, and there are about 500,000 illegal immigrants. They're hoping that America will change the law and they will become legitimate, Americans.
So they are the green card holders?
No, they are not. They are not. So now you have 1.8 million eligible Indian American voters. They're spread across the United States, but in the so-called battleground states, the number of Indian Americans is more than the margin with which Trump won the last election.
Right.
Which is one of the reasons why Mr. Biden and Mr. Trump are making desperate attempts to reach out to the Indian Americans. And the fact that an Indian American with a black father and an Indian mother from Chennai is the vice presidential candidate is going to make a deep impression on the way the Indian Americans are going to vote in the American elections.
So you're talking of Kamala Devi Harris.
Kamala Devi Harris. And she had this debate with her vice president, and she came off better than Mr. Pence, I guess. And in any case, traditionally, 3 out of every 4 Indian Americans have been voting for the Democratic Party, and barely 1 out of 4 go for Trump, you see. And there has been some talk about what Kamala Harris said and Joe Biden said about what the government of India did in Kashmir in August last year.
That is about the human rights violations
human
in
rights,
Kashmir.
yeah, that's right, CAA 370 and so on. But you see, that is not going to make a lot of difference in my opinion. If you remember, when Obama was a senator, he was actually opposed to Indo-US civil nuclear cooperation agreement. But
yes, during Mr. Manmohan Singh's time.
That's right. But when he became the president, he changed this thing.
Changed.
And you see, now you had Mr. Mike Pompeo and Mark Esper, who came here last week and signed 5 very big agreements. One of them is the Basic Exchange Cooperation Agreement, and we're going to get the latest aircraft and drones and all kinds of these things. So short of American boots on the Himalayas, I think we are going to get a lot of assistance.
And there's also a large number of presence of Indians from south of India in United States,
Yes.
and Kamala Harris is from the south of India. So do you think this is going to be like a factor which is going to impact their minds?
See, the older generation of Indian Americans who migrated to America in the 60s, 70s or 80s, they still have nostalgia about India. But the Indian Americans who are born of those parents, they think more like Americans.
Like socioeconomic factors are more important.
Yes, the jobs and socioeconomic this thing, their health and wages and all that are very, very important. The other thing about the Indian Americans is that they are better educated than even the white Americans, the Jews, the Hispanics, the blacks. They make twice the amount of money the average white American makes in the United States. More than $100,000 a year
Right.
an Indian family makes, you see. So it is possibly the richest and also most influential community in America today. And
Especially the people from Gujarat, they are hoteliers, big hoteliers in
actually, if you
United
go
States.
back into past history, you will find that the motel industry was sinking in the United States, and today motel industry is booming mainly because of the Patels who went and settled there. They invested a lot of money in the motel industry, and the motel industry has really come up, and they are also into a lot of jewelry business and
Trading.
a lot of trading and all that. They're competing with the Jews.
see, so much so, these Patels were basically people who were thrown out of Uganda by Idi Amin.
Yes, of course.
And they went and they took over all the motels.
Patels and Shahs, as Idi Amin said.
That's right. In California, so much so that they are called potels, not motels anymore.
Okay, the motels are called hotels.
Hotels, you see. So, and you see, the Indian American community, they are rich, well-to-do, and all that. So, all the Democratic and Republican Party candidates, they try their best to collect as much money as donation as possible. Every time there is a presidential election, the Indian American community raises $5 million, $10 million, that kind of stuff. So, in fact, the Obama administration had 40 Indian Americans working for them, Even Trump didn't have that many people, but you have a large number of Indian Americans who are taking a very active part in the campaign for Joe Biden.
Right.
And if Joe Biden comes to power on the 3rd of November, I will not be surprised if more than 50 Indian Americans
Will be in the president's house.
the
White House.
Biden administration.
Right.